President Donald Trump is hitting pause yet again. The U.S. president announcing tariffs on many Canadian goods are now on hold for a month. This coming just 2 days after the U.S. president launched his trade war against Canada. But even with this latest reprieve, the federal government says it is continuing with its retaliatory tariffs. The province also forging ahead with an extra 25% charge on electricity to the U.S. as of Monday. Queen's Park reporter Loretta Redicop has more.
Premier Ford, thanks so much for joining us.
Premier Doug Ford was once again on a U.S. TV network Thursday morning, telling CNN that starting Monday, electricity the province sends to 3 U.S. states will cost 25% more.
Honestly, it really bothers me. We have to do this. I don't want to do this. I want to send more electricity.
It'll mean a big price hike for the 1.5 million U.S. customers Ontario supplies with electricity. Homes and businesses in the northern states of Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. Ford believes he can make the change without having to recall the legislature. He later told reporters that even if Donald Trump were to put a 1-month pause on tariffs to Canada, the increase would remain in place.
He did this before. Remember, he said he'd do it 1 month, 3 days later, a week later, he puts the tariffs on. So as I always say, you know, you touch a stove once and you get burnt. You don't touch that stove again. The only deal is drop the tariffs unconditionally.
And later, Trump did add that 1-month pause on products covered by the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Free Trade Agreement, signed during his first presidency, meaning Ontario electricity could go way up in price for Americans in days. One academic applauds the idea, but isn't sure it'll work.
Unfortunately, Ontario doesn't have leverage in this space. For the most part, Ontario exports to the United States because it has to. That we are in situations where generation exceeds domestic demand.
Ford's office promises more details on Monday on the extra charge to U.S. customers. Later in the day, Ford was back on another U.S. network, Fox.
Isn't this a shame? It's an absolute mess.
During the interview, the host played an old clip from President Trump after he signed the trade deal with Canada and Mexico.
The USMCA is the largest, fairest, most balanced and modern trade agreement ever achieved.
Ford then repeated his harsh words for Trump to a U.S. audience, saying he believes the tariffs are not about fentanyl or illegal border crossings.
Don't use this as an excuse, because that's all it is an absolute excuse. He wants to declare an economic war on his closest friends, his closest allies in the entire world.
Ford's office says there will be no change to any retaliatory measures Ontario has added until the tariff threat is gone, meaning U.S. alcohol will stay off LCBO shelves. Loretta Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
This tension between the U.S. and Canada is having an effect on travel. According to flight data, many are canceling trips to the States, opting to spend their money and their time elsewhere. Alicia Son reports.
U.S.-Canada relations right now have travelers saying bon voyage to the States as a destination for the foreseeable future. Watching the Indian Wells tennis tournament on the couch isn't quite the same as being there.
I love our Canadians. Both of them are playing tomorrow, which I would have liked to have seen. Just last night, I sold the last of our tickets. It was a bit stressful.
For Lisa Charters, it's partly the dollar, but also...
I can't even imagine that Canada would be part of the United States. We are a completely different country. So it was very upsetting just in general, but it was the dollar that dropped. Like, it was significant enough to make me go, what am I doing?
Same reasons the Glazer family isn't going on their trip to Myrtle Beach. They would have been there by now for March break.
I think maybe the second week of February we canceled Myrtle Beach. We canceled our hotel reservation, lost our deposit, and then we've rebooked. We're going to Mexico with our kids next week. With all of the tariff threats and this constant, Canada is a 51st state, which we hate. We just decided that we just didn't feel in good conscience that we could go down to the United States and spend money and, support an economy in a country that really is out to hurt us as Canadians right now.
According to Flight Centre, February saw a steep drop in plane tickets.
When we compare February 2025 to February 2024, we've noticed that there is a 40% decrease in Canadians booking travels to the U.S.
And just how far are some Canadians willing to go to boycott U.S. travel?
Places like Japan, believe it or not, because the yen is really low and our dollar holds strong.
The folks at Flight Centre say travel is still booming. Canadians are just skipping over the U.S.
Expand your horizons. We're seeing this as an opportunity. Canadians aren't stopping travel, they're just looking to other destinations.
The new travel patterns follows the overall trend of spending time and money elsewhere.
For an average Canadian family like ours, that's the only thing that we can do to, to fight back. And I think, I think that that's what a lot of people are doing. And it's good to see that.
Tennis fan Lisa Charter says she'll be booking tickets for the Canadian Open tennis tournament this summer.
I usually go, but I'm going to really go this year. I'm going to spend my money that I saved in Indian Wells, and I might even buy a box seat.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Peel Public Health is warning the public of potential exposure to measles in several locations. The province has been seeing a concerning spike in measles cases since last year. And with March break travel just around the corner, public health officials are advising people to make sure they're up to date with the vaccine. Dale Manukduk has this story.
Peel Public Health is investigating a case of measles.
It was confirmed earlier this week, and this case had a recent history of international travel. We had a few exposures to the general public.
Those locations include an Air Canada flight from Dubai to Toronto the morning of February 24th at Pearson International Airport's Terminal 1, Mississauga's Abood Health Walk-in Clinic on the 27th, and the ER at Credit Valley Hospital on the 27th and 28th. We don't know the age of the person infected or if they're vaccinated, but the public health unit is concerned about measles vaccination rates in the community.
In the 2023-2024 school year, and this is coverage amongst 7-year-olds, it was 36% at that time, compared to 88% in the 2018-2019 academic year.
According to Public Health Ontario's most recent measles summary, there were 101 total cases between 2013 and 2023. In 2024 alone, that number spikes to 64 cases. And as of February 26th this year, another huge jump, already 119 confirmed cases plus 23 probable.
About half of the cases are occurring among children 10 years and under. We also know that that the cases are occurring predominantly among those who have never been vaccinated against measles.
In Toronto, there's only been one confirmed case so far in 2025, but the local public health unit is concerned about the upcoming spring break.
As people do travel for March break, as they come back, especially if they are unvaccinated, we can expect to see cases. What we don't want to see is then the cases end up spreading and multiplying and ending up in an outbreak.
Measles symptoms begin 7 to 21 days after infection and may include high fever and a rash. Public health officials are encouraging people to get vaccinated and reminding them it doesn't require access to primary care.
We do have vaccine clinics that will be held during the March break, and those are in particular for students. Though these vaccines, like the MMR vaccine for measles, are available at a lot of walk-in clinics as well.
Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Patients of a Toronto gynecologist are furious after receiving a notice from Toronto Public Health. Hundreds of patients were told that there is a risk they were exposed to hepatitis B, C, and HIV due to the improper cleaning of medical instruments. Talia Ricci has this story.
Like, my rage is at this.
Zara Baksh recently received a letter from Toronto Public Health saying she may have been exposed to bloodborne infections due to improper cleaning at her gynecologist office.
I think I spent most of the day just in shock. And I ended up feeling quite ill by the end of the day. I don't know how else to say it. It was mind-numbing. I felt numb. I mean, I still do right now.
Public Health investigated Dr. Esther Park's clinic in High Park after receiving a report of an infection control issue, specifically around the cleaning, disinfection, and sterilization of medical instruments used for certain procedures. Toronto Public Health told CBC News it notified approximately 2,500 patients that received specific procedures between 2020 and 2024 that they might have been exposed to an infection. Certain bloodborne infections, such as hepatitis B and hepatitis C, can be passed through the reuse of improperly cleaned instruments, the statement said.
I felt very violated. I felt also just a huge wave of curiosity of, I thought these types of procedures or the cleanliness of tools were managed, I guess, at a higher level, the way a hospital would manage the cleanliness of their tools.
Baksh's letter said as a precaution, Toronto Public Health recommended she be tested for HBV, HCV, and HIV. Toronto Public Health says it believes the risk of transmission to be low, but that isn't enough to put her at ease.
I feel frozen, to be honest with you. I feel like it's terrifying.
Dozens of other patients have been sharing negative reviews of the doctor online. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario says it's investigating Dr. Park in relation to infection control issues in her practice. Baksh's test results came back negative, but she still wants answers.
I want to see justice, and I don't know what that looks like. I mean, I have so many questions for her. I don't have access to her. But I hope that somebody does have access to her to ask her, like, why over the span of 4 years, like, that could happen.
CBC News reached out to the clinic, and a staff member said they would not be providing a comment on the situation. The office's answering machine says that Dr. Park is retiring and no longer taking on any patients, and that the clinic will be closing in April. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Ottawa is moving to crack down on what are known as forever chemicals. These are substances that are widely used in everything from clothes to cosmetics. As Mike Crawley explains, there's been growing public concerns over its risks to both human health and the environment.
Miriam Diamond's research has shown just how widespread forever chemicals are, from food packaging to cosmetics to school uniforms.
It's like spraying Scotchgard on your kid.
Forever chemicals got their nickname because they linger in the environment for so long. In places where they've leached into the water supply, higher rates of cancer and infertility have been found.
It goes even in our blood and through the placenta to our kids, and probably with an effect on the next generation and the generation after that.
They're more formally called PFAS, short for per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Canada is now declaring the bulk of them to be toxic, paving the way for restrictions.
It's an unprecedented approach since we're regulating the entire class of PFAS and not just one substance, one molecule at a time.
But the move doesn't actually ban the use of any of these chemicals, merely opens the door to a ban eventually.
The measures that are being proposed are simply not sufficient. The government could be enacting restrictions right away on those products.
There's a long road ahead to get these substances out of products and out of our economy. So this is just really a first step.
I certainly share the views that by some that we should try and go faster, and we are trying to go as fast as we can.
The first substance the government will consider restricting, firefighting foam containing PFAS.
Other places in the world are moving away from it, and are moving away from it quickly. Alternatives are available.
Several U.S. states are far ahead of Canada in restricting forever chemicals. California and New York have moved the furthest, banning PFAS in clothing since the beginning of the year. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
With a strike deadline set for Monday, members of the union representing 30,000 city workers held a practice picket today.
We need the change that we deserve. We are the ones who make these programs and services possible for Torontonians. Without us, the city wouldn't run.
Wages are the main sticking point in negotiations between the union and the city, with workers arguing their pay hasn't kept pace with inflation. Meanwhile, the city posted its final offer online yesterday. If the strike happens, services like March break camps, building permits, and 311 calls will be suspended. Emergency services, shelters, and long-term care homes will not be affected. Welcome back. The Ontario Fire Marshal has been called in to investigate a blaze that ripped through a historic building in downtown Bowmanville overnight. Greg Ross has the details.
Cell phone video captured flames shooting out of the back of a 3-story building on King Street West in downtown Bowmanville.
It was scary.
This woman owns a bar just a few doors down.
There's a lot of smoke out front, but the flames were mostly at the back and up the top, like coming out of the roof. It was wild though, and you could hear like the floors drop and you could hear the windows crack, and it was pretty intense.
When firefighters arrived at around midnight, they attempted to enter the building.
We quickly realized the fire was spreading up into the attic. We had to get back out of the building and do a defensive attack because of the intensity of the fire.
The ground floor of the building is commercial units. Most of the businesses were closed. The upper 2 floors are all residential. Fire officials say it appears the fire originated in a 3rd-floor apartment. At least 24 people had to be evacuated. At the time, police reported that at least one of the residents was unaccounted for.
So it's unknown the whereabouts of the person at this time. It will be an ongoing part of the investigation.
Multiple business owners in the area have been impacted. Those with shops directly below the fire have no idea how bad the damage is. This woman owns 2 businesses in the building.
That's the scary part, is that we really don't know what the damage is. I mean, I've tried to obviously get into my business, but no way of getting in at this point because it's unsafe.
For most of the day, firefighters doused the flames with 3 ladder trucks. The owner of this furniture store says he was spared by the flames, but he is now dealing with water damage.
I would say 80% of our store has been flooded. Smoke damage is heavy. One of our bedroom galleries is probably totally gone.
It's still not clear how this fire started. The Ontario Fire Marshal is now on scene, and they are expected to be here for the next several days investigating. Greg Ross, CBC News, Bowmanville.
To an update now on yesterday's fire in Yorkville that ripped through several town homes. Toronto police saying the incident is now being investigated as suspicious. Fire crews were still on site today checking for hot spots, and they were called to the area of Bay and Davenport around 4:30 yesterday morning. Toronto Fire says the flames quickly spread across multiple homes. The fire so large, some buildings across the street had their windows melted or shattered from the heat. In total, 6 homes were destroyed, but thankfully no one was injured. York police are searching for at least 3 suspects believed to be involved in an arson that damaged over a dozen vehicles in a Markham storage lot early Sunday morning.
The fire actually occurred very early in the morning hours at approximately 3 a.m. And because of that length of time, it actually extinguished on its own. And so once we arrived on scene, it was determined that 13 vehicles had been severely damaged by the fire. Now, fortunately, there were no injuries. However, it's quite concerning that this level of damage was done.
Video surveillance captured the suspects pouring what appears to be an accelerant onto several vehicles and then setting them on fire. Police are looking for the 4-door dark sedan the suspects fled in. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. And the City of Toronto is upgrading one of its TTC maintenance facilities to house 25 new streetcars.
We need more streetcars, we need more operators. Delivering on these commitments means we need more vehicles, right? More streetcars to get commuters where they need to go faster. And Hillcrest Yard is a vital part of this vision.
The Hillcrest complex on Bathurst will become the 4th streetcar support facility in the GTA. Streetcars from this location can be activated to service the Bathurst and St. Clair routes on the TTC network. Construction is expected to last approximately 5 years. A car crashed into a store this morning in Etobicoke just before 10. Now, this was the scene following the crash as crews cleaned up the aftermath. It happened in the area of the Queensway and Royal York Road. Police say the driver was taken to hospital as a precaution but is not facing any charges at this time. All right, Colette joins me now with a check on the forecast. And Colette, definitely feeling more of that chill in the air today, right? As you said would happen.
Yes, exactly. That little bit of a flip around. And now we're back into winter's kind of taken back over again. But we'll get back into the battlegrounds where spring wants to kind of make an appearance. And so that's going to happen as we move into next week. So I do have some milder temperatures to show you. They're just not necessarily in the short term, okay? But we will get into those as we get into next week. So let's have a look at what is going on with
with our jet stream, those upper winds. There's that deep trough there off the eastern seaboard. So the system that kind of was impacting us really through yesterday and bringing us even the strong winds we've been experiencing through today, that's now, in Atlantic Canada and still having an impact there. And then where you see those red colorations there in the Central Plains, that's the next system already, moving across the U.S. with some active weather. But this one is going to track more eastward, and so just kind of give a glancing blow to southwestern Ontario and shouldn't really have an impact on the GTA. However, in the meantime, still on the backside of the system, there is some blowing snow, and there were some highway closures due to that blowing snow, and also winter weather travel advisories because of those dropping temperatures in areas where there was melt. If there's no salt out, it's not treated, then you have surfaces that are slippery there. So something to be mindful of. Mostly clear skies through the overnight hours, and to start the day we should have a nice amount of sunshine. Now I'll caution you that into the afternoon we could see a few more clouds kind of working their way in and becoming a little more variable, but I think it's actually going to be quite pleasant in that sense in the GTA. But if you look into southwestern Ontario, there you go, that's that next system, and that's just the frontal boundary kind of trying to have an impact into southwestern Ontario, and then it will retreat actually and stay stateside. With that, they'll have a little bit of a light mix moving on through, and then we get another nice day, ridge of high pressure into Saturday, so sunshine again. In fact, we'll have a few days with some sunshine here, so it's an encouraging 5-day forecast. A few centimeters up to about 5 around Georgian Bay, and perhaps some rain showers mixing with some wet flurries there in southwestern Ontario, giving a dusting to 1 to 2 centimeters before it really melts on contact. Overnight temperatures -3 for Toronto, but boy, oh boy, tomorrow afternoon, 2 degrees. That sun's going to feel good. Set that clock ahead on the weekend and look at Monday and Tuesday, 8, and then a high of 11.
That's good for kids and the parents for March break, right? Just in time for March break?
Yes, that we're going to have some mild temps. Yep.
Thanks so much, Colette, and that's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everyone.